Once a man walked into the court of Harun al-Rashid, as the title is given to him. It's an unbefitting title, but it was given to him. Who gave it to him is not of any concern to us right now. And at this time, Harun was commanding the Islamic Caliphate, or the People's Caliphate, or the Saqifa's Caliphate, whatever you want to label it. And during this time, a man walked into his court, or walked into the gathering that he had, and he said, I have some trick or some show to put on, as they would in front of the royals and the ruling families. And this man got, I think there were needles or spikes of some sort, and he threw the first one into the ground. Then he threw the second one and it landed into the first. And so forth, a third, a fourth, and they all would land into each other. So then Harun said, give him a reward and then beat him. So they gave him a reward and they beat him. And he said, look, the reward's understood, money's always good. You'll make an excuse for it. Yes, I deserve this. So I'm happy you gave me a reward, but why was I beaten? He says, you were beaten because you have wasted your time learning this. You get these people today with these Guinness Book of Records. How many balloons can someone put in their ear hole while standing on one leg? And they say this guy lasted for 14 seconds, walking on oil or something like that. They come up with all these, you wouldn't say trivial, you would say more idiotic ideas. Ideas that people would not even think of. Things that have no purpose. Things that have no reason whatsoever. There is no purpose in doing a thing that has no purpose. In doing anything that has no aim. So why does our discussion revolve around character building? Why do I need to build my character and build myself spiritually, when suffices that if I believe in God and I do the minimal good actions that are required and I abstain from sin and whatever slips here and there Allah will forgive, why is it that I have to try and better myself? Why is it that I have to achieve the best spiritual achievement that I can? It isn't so that I can think that I am better than others, because this is retrogression. This is retardation in its correct meaning, not as people understand it today. When it comes to spirituality, the more spiritual an individual becomes, the lesser they think of themselves. They seldom use the word ana. It becomes like essay writing. You don't say I think. They don't use this. They move away from this ana. They no longer think themselves to be anything worthy, because they have a deeper understanding of how useless they are. Why? Because they are lacking. It's not about bringing yourself down, wrong. It's about putting yourself in place. Understanding your position. Because the moment we think that we are above, كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى. The moment when you hear the word ghani, for example, we hear the word someone is ghani, what do we think? Automatically we think it means rich, but that's not what the word means. Ghani, when you say ana غني عن هذا. For example, I am not in need of this thing. If you hear this as a statement, that I am not in need of this thing. A ghani is someone that is not in need. That the moment an individual thinks, I am not in need, that I don't need to listen to a sermon, I don't need to listen to dua, they get to the point where they start to see those that do these things below them. And Allah Azza wa Jal says that mankind, when He says yatgha, He means they become rebellious. Rebellious against who? Against the system? No, they become rebellious against their Lord, their Master, their Creator. They start to see themselves independent, not in need. That when we read the verse in Surah Al-Ikhlas, Allahu Samad, that Allah is the one that does not depend upon anyone and everyone depends upon Allah Azza wa Jal, this individual sees himself as he is needless of anything. Why? Because of himself. Now the believer, when the believer achieves this height of spirituality, the believer does become needless and does believe he is needless because he only needs Allah. He finds everything else insignificant. As for this person, la yatgha, the one that believes they are needless, they believe that they are needless of Allah. But you know, when someone says, why do you need to, these atheists, why do you need to worship God? All these unintelligent people believe in God and worship God. Who do they worship? Take a look. They'll sit there and praise and venerate and adore who? Scholars, university lecturers, people that go to the toilet as they do, people that need to do all these things that they do. When I mention toilet, because these bodily functions put you back in your place. They let you know you need to do this. Doesn't matter what you have, you need to do this. And these people look up to them instead, and they become needless of Allah Azza wa Jal. We don't need Allah. We just need these people, these educators. These are the ones that will put us forward. As for the person that reaches the heights of spirituality, he understands the need of his Creator. Others may look at this study and they say, hold on, we can never be like this. Honestly, you look at what a righteous person is, and I will just give a small summary as we move along of the first 10 points that were mentioned last year before we continue. You read these and you wonder, can I ever become like this? Can I ever achieve these heights? Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayh makes two statements. The first one in where he mentions his position and his status and the heights that he has achieved by command of God, because he needs to show who he is as Allah has ordered him. And then he says, after he explains what he lives like, he says, لا تقدروا على هذا, that you cannot be like I was. You know, these people that tried to claim that they had reached the level of being like Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayh, he says, you cannot reach this level. He says, however, be an aid to me. A'inuni, with what? He says, wara'an wa ijtihad. Now if you look at this, he is giving you a point for you to look at. That be an aid, how? By abstaining from sin and doing what is obligatory. Allah Azza wa Jalla, even in the Quran, says, قَدْ كَانُوا لَكُمْ أُسْوَةٌ, about the prophets, that they were an example for you to follow. And Rasulullah, Allah mentions as Uswatun Hasana, that he was the best example for you to follow. However, in this narration, you understand you can never reach there, but it doesn't tell you to stop. You can never reach this level, but it does not mean I stop. And this is when Amir al-Mu'mineen, in the other discussion, mentions, he says that I had a brother. And when he speaks about that he had a brother with God, and in other words, someone that was in the way of Allah, a believing brother, and he mentions the qualities of this person. And honestly, when you read the qualities, you go, whoa, it's only a paragraph. But then he finishes off with this statement. He says, فَإِن لَمْ تَسْتَطِيعُوهَا فَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ أَخْذَ الْقَلِيلِ خَيْرٌ مِنْ تَرْكِ الْكَثِيرِ. And this is the most important point. He says, if you cannot be this, know that to take a little is better than leaving a lot. You know, someone says, too much, put it aside. He says, no. Pick out what you can achieve and work gradually. This is the whole concept of us discussing this or going over this. And the mention of our spiritual, or what you say, you know, when you see a flower that is wilted, you know, as you see it move to the side, you see, you know, you have this internal seediness, lethargy within, that you feel depleted. My spirituality has died. And this comes from two things. The first is what? The first is the ghafla. The first thing that makes you feel like this is the ghafla. And the ghafla is that moment of forgetfulness. That moment where you forget what you are here for. Forget the reason. That's why when we mention in the Quran, when Allah Azza wa Jal speaks to His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, He says, فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرْ. فَذَكِّرْ. What does that mean? Remind. The Prophet didn't come along and say, listen people, I got some new things to tell you. You look at the way the Prophet taught. When he spoke to the people, the style in which he spoke. Why doesn't the verse in the Quran in Surah Al-Ikhlas begin with Allahu? Why does it begin with Qul Allahu Ahad? Why is there a huwa? Did you ever think why is there a huwa after the Qul? Qul is say. Allah Azza wa Jal telling His Messenger to say. Why doesn't it just say Qul Allahu Ahad? Say Allah is one. Why does He say Huwa? What is the purpose of telling Him He? Tell the people He. Because the people know. See, two elements are what bring you to understanding or knowing that there's a creator. The first one is the fitrah. It's what you were created with. This intrinsic, quintessential, fundamental, most basic makeup that you have, or what we call the BIOS in computer terms. This BIOS that comes with you, this initial makeup, tells you there is something that I need. There's that Dr. Michael Persinger with the Koran helmet. People, if you write this Koran helmet and look it up on YouTube. He made a helmet that relieves people because they need to attach to something. He says, for some unknown reason, this guy's a doctor. He says, but for some unknown reason, man wants to connect with something. So he made this Koran helmet that they wear and they go, oh, I felt satisfaction. It's like someone was talking to me. This need to connect was made in your makeup, from your essence. Allah Azza wa Jal created you Sibghatullah, or Fitratullah, sorry. In both verses, one says Fitra, it's the way that you were designed, and one says Sibgha. It's basically what Allah Azza wa Jal had submerged your soul, taban, not literally, in the understanding. A lot of these verses, remember, they're not literal. You know, some people have the Wahhabi-esque understanding of the terminology in the Quran, that Yadullah fawqa aydihim, that means God has a hand above their hand, and etc. No, that when Allah is trying to, or giving you an explanation that you can somehow understand. The other element required for me to know my Creator is the aql. The aql allows you to make the deductions. For me to go through every idea of what God is. Every thought of what Allah Azza wa Jal is. You take a look at all the teachings of what God is. If you take a look at what? The beliefs that are brought by Christians. The beliefs, and that's why when you ever hear this atheism argument, when they say, can God create a rock that he cannot lift? Why do they ask this question? You know why? Because they picture God as a man. God is depicted as a man. Can you imagine that he makes a rock but he can't pick it up? The depiction of God initially is wrong. So I look at all these, and after assessing them all and after understanding them all, I come to the conclusion of who my Creator is. Allah Azza wa Jal sends the prophets. Allah Azza wa Jal sends the prophets so that they may teach us of what we already know but is gone. And this is what they came to do. So we have this forgetfulness. We have this moment. Sometimes you meet someone in the street and they're not religious at all, but they know so much about religion. You go, wow, this guy knows so much. Why isn't he religious? Why isn't this person religious? They have the information, but they have entered this state of ghafla for so long. This forgetfulness. They have not came, or they have not attended gatherings where they will be reminded. The second is the dalala, or the aberrance, where someone turns away from religion. Why? Because they go down a weird and wacky path. So if we look at the first one, this forgetfulness or inattentiveness, it's a small issue because they still have their religion. They still have their faith. It is an issue, but it's smaller than the first. Why? Because they don't have a wacky and bogus and adventurous thought of Allah Azza wa Jal. You know, they don't think they don't have, you know, the movies that they make today. Like, for example, they made a blockbuster called Avatar. This was a sophistic idea, a pantheistic idea that Allah is everywhere. Or as the Persians saying, Hami Ust, that Allah is in everything. God is everywhere. God is everything. I honestly, I once said to someone I was debating with, I said, what about, I go straight for the killer blow. Because I just want to get to the end. I go, what about feces? He said, feces is beautiful. You do not recognize it as so. I swear to God, on this month, that this is what happened. This is their perception because they become so deviated. They become so deviated. They deviate so far away from Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah makes them a mockery to mankind. The people look at them and say, wow, did that guy really just say that? They reach this point because they want their point to be so. That they want this weird and adventurous idea, this outlandish idea, to be accepted. And this is worse than inattentiveness. This is the most crucial, this is the most critical moment that people forget being so small, but people becoming deviated and entering this dalala, makes them so far away from religion. If you take a look at the Daesh, okay, ISIS, they have this unbelievable sexual appetite. You take a look at what everything has to do with rape. Even they caught them on camera involved with a quadruped. We'll just leave it at that. So these people, they have this insatiable appetite and deviated appetite because of this dalala. They've moved away, and God shows them out with this humiliating manner. Now if you look at the verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah Azza wa Jal says, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. Look at this verse. لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ. Now when we say bir, what is bir? Bir can be mentioned for many things, but they all are linked with what is good, what is righteous, what is upright. Religion is not complicated. People complicate religion. Religion is basic. You read this verse, people try and delve into this. I want to get into the essence of this verse. I want to go as deep. I want to delve. I want to penetrate through this verse and see what happens. They want something to spark. The verse is plain and simple to see. Where do you need to go? لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. So righteousness is not about prayers. Yes, we have to pray. It's obligatory. But the ones, you watch these blind, and when I say blind, I'm not talking about the fact that they're actually blind, but also that their souls are blind. Muftis in Saudi Arabia, when you see this guy, for some reason they're always blind and they're always hideous. You know, something out of Greek mythology. They always look, you know, honestly, that's probably where they got the idea of the Medusa. So these hideous looking monsters that come out and say, oh, women can't drive cars. Or then they turn around and say, لا يشتد الرحال, that you cannot go on a journey except to two places, Mecca and Medina. They're the only two places. Why are your princes always with their boyfriends in London? This isn't a joke. You go read the papers. They always caught with a boyfriend or something somewhere. They're princes, not their princesses. Just like the highway, princes. It's not princess. Their princes are all out with different partners in these countries. And then they tell you, لا يشتد الرحال, that you cannot travel except to two places, Mecca or Medina. If you take a look at their foreheads, they are black from worship. And Amir al-Mu'mineen says, نوم على يقين خير من صلاة في شك. That to worship, to sleep with yaqeen, to sleep and your faith is intact, is better than to pray and you have doubt. Meaning doubt that there is problems with your prayers, problems with who and what you're worshipping. Yes, you're facing the Kaaba, but God knows what you're thinking of. There were the companions that would pray behind the Prophet and they would have hubal in their sleeves. You know, the god that was made out of dates, they would tie him in their sleeves and they'd be praying. And the reason for this, that they would think to themselves, if the mushrikeen, this is how much doubt they had in the Prophet, would ever overcome the Muslims, you know, we raise our hands, say, you know, like some people get the 313 tap, they think when the Imam Mehdi comes, they go, one of you, you know, so I can be recognized. They have a joke, they say that that once this Egyptian man tattooed a Star of David on his arm. And they said, why are you doing that for? He says, look, you know, in case the Israelis overcome Egypt and overtake Egypt, you know, I can show them the tattoo on one of you. And then they said, what if they get defeated by the Arabs? He said, Bota'iti. That's a joke. It means something in Arabic. It means I cut my hand off. But this is it. That these people kept a contingency plan. Plan B. This prophet's not a prophet. How is their prayer going to be accepted? How will my prayer be accepted if that's what I'm thinking about the whole time? So then, before we continue the meaning of this verse, Allah mentions these people in several places in the Quran. Because when you see them and they're talking, you think to yourself, man, this guy actually believes. Really believes in this. Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ. That when you tell them, do not cause trouble in the land, do not cause mischief in the land, they say what? We are muslihun, we are the ones that are, not only are we good, but we are the ones that are spreading the goodness. That we want to spread Sharia law. We want the whole world, we're spreading the goodness of lashing people. You know, the Taliban, when they lashed a man because his beard was shaved. His beard was shaved and he was dead. They lashed the corpse. They beat it. Can you imagine that, honestly? Watching a guy lashing a dead body. You know, beating a dead horse. You know, this guy was lashing a dead body. There's no point. Or when they come to kill a woman and they say, look, sister, ya ukht, that's what they call her. You know, you've been accused of adultery. She says, Khatrun Nabi, you know, fear God, what are you doing? And he says, listen, doesn't matter. You're going to be a martyr. You'll be with the Prophet just after we put this bullet in your head. You think, she's going to be the Prophet, but you're going to kill her? Illogical. Where do they come up with these ideas? مَا لَكُمْ كَيْفَ تَحْكُمُونَ. How could they think like this? Allah Azza wa Jal says, قُلْ هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا الَّذِينَ ضَلَّ سَعْيُهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَيَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ يُحْسِنُونَ صُنْعًا. That these people that are deviated in this world and they think that they are doing good. He says these are the ones that their deeds are all at a loss. They've done nothing. They've brought nothing forth on the day of judgment. We don't have an understanding, we're going to fall down. As the proverb says, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Things that they move into because they've taken religion in the wrong way. وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرِّ. So first he says, لَيْسَ الْبِرِّ. Bir, or righteousness, or good, is not that you face the Qibla. Mashriq wal Maghrib, he is in reference, Mashriq, being where the sun rises, doesn't mean east, like sometimes written in books. Maghrib is where the sun sets. Because sometimes the Qibla, depends on where you are in the world, it faces the sunrise, sometimes it faces the sunset in different directions. He says, وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. That bir is first, he begins with what? Is belief in God and the Day of Judgment. Essential to believe in Allah, and it is essential to believe in the Day of Judgment. Why? That you are accountable for what you do. That you are accountable. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهِ وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدٍ وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jal says in this verse, اتَّقُوا اللَّهِ. Be wary of Allah, so that you can see what you have been brought forth for this day of accountability. And then he says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ. On top of that, continue with the taqwa. إِنَّ اللَّهَ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. Allah knows of what you do. He says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. Do not be like those that forgot Allah, so Allah made them forget themselves. This is why when they are being taken away They say, could you imagine someone runs in, the logic of it, I'm going to strap myself with explosives and run into a group of innocent people and kill them, blow myself up, and then I'm going to have dinner with the Prophet. I'll show you where the illogical part of this is, if you can't already see this. They get to the point, you say, what if you kill a non-Muslim? They say, kafir, Jahannam. What if you kill a Shi'i? Kafir, Jahannam. What if you kill a Sunni? What if you kill a Wahhabi? Because Sunni, he still has this. Sunni is what? He's a deviant because he hasn't joined Daesh. Then what if you kill a Wahhabi? If he's not Nusra, taban, if he's a Daeshi as well, he says, alright, we're stuck here. So they came with a clause to get out of this. He says, well, he'll join me on the dinner with the Prophet. Maybe he doesn't want to. Maybe he still wants to have dinner with his family. Maybe he's late for dinner. No, I will take him along with me, whether he likes it or not. This is the logic that they have. So Allah Azza wa Jal mentions here first belief. He says, آمن بالله واليوم الآخر الآخر والملائكة والكتاب, the angels, the books, والنبيين, the prophets, وآتى المال على حبه ذوي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل, that he gives in the way of God to all these categories that Allah has mentioned. Okay? وَالسَّائِلِينَ وَفِي الرِّقَابِ وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ. Then he mentions the prayer, which we initially began with. وَآتَ الزَّكَاةِ. And he says, وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَاهَدُوا. You know, the ones that make promises and keep them. Those special people that exist somewhere on the planet. وَالصَّابِرِينَ فِي الْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَحِينَ الْبَأْسِ. Those that are always patient through these disturbing, distressful times. And then he says, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُتَّقُونَ. These are the ones that are righteous. They are the ones that are truthful. Even to the point, see, it's not about, it's not about the Kaaba. It's about the soul. This is why when the Prophet ﷺ stands in the Masjid al-Nabawi Sharif in Medina and says, whoever prays 2 rak'ats here, it is equal to praying 10,000 rak'ats. And then he says, whoever prays 2 rak'ats in Masjid al-Haram, where the Kaaba is Masjid al-Haram, it's equal to praying 100,000 rak'ats. 10 times more Masjid al-Nabawi Sharif. And then he says, but those that pray 2 rak'ats in their own home with ikhlas is better than this. In other words, if you can do the 2 rak'ats in Mecca with ikhlas, it's the best. But if you can do 2 with ikhlas, no matter where you do them, ikhlas means devotion. It's devoted to Allah. It's got sincerity to Allah. This is better than all this. This is way better. We'll finish off with just one last verse. When 2 men were arguing with each other who is better. One does what? He gives water to those that come for Hajj. If you notice, when Jibreel says to the Messenger of Allah, when Jibreel speaks, you take heed. Jibreel speaks to the Almighty. So what he has are treasure troves to give. Bezels of wisdom. He gives these gems of wisdom, and then he says to the Prophet, if I were to be a human, it would be for 7 reasons. I don't want to go over them. But one of the 7 reasons, he says, Siqayatul Hajj. To give a pilgrim water. This is one of the 7 reasons, if I was to be a human, it would be for this. He knows its value. There is a man that his job is to give water to the pilgrims. And there is one that is the keeper of the Kaaba. He has the key to the door. He looks after the Kaaba. And so he's always there, and the other ones give him water to the pilgrims. And they complain, who is better? They argue, I do this. The other one says, whose dad's stronger? Whose dad's fitter? Whose dad is better equipped at fighting, etc., etc. So then Allah Azza wa Jal reveals to His Prophet, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says to him, to tell them this, أَجَعَلْتُمْ سِقَايَةَ الْحَاجِ وَعِمَارَةَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. You're worried about giving water to the Hajj, and these are both important things. And then he points to Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. He says, كَمَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَجَاهَدَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ لَا يَسْتَوُونَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. That you want to compare giving water to the Hajj and those that are continuous in, like this man, the keeper of that door and looking after the Kaaba, are they like? You want to compare these two positions to the one that believes in Allah and the day of judgment, pointing to Amir al-Mu'minin, and strives in the way of Allah. And he says there is no comparison in the eyes of Allah. There is no comparison. It's not about who you are. It's not about what you have. It's about what you do. It's always unlike this world. In this world, it's all about who you are and what you have. Who you are, your position gets you a position. Isn't that right? Who you know gets you a position. Who you relate to gets you a position. With Allah Azza wa Jal, it's about what you do. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to purify our actions in this month and to make our actions accepted. وهذا والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.